You have questions, we have answers. This is Jane Miller.
And this is Ken Miller. Welcome to our show, all about real estate with Ken and Jane. Today, Jane, we're going to talk about buying a home from the buyer perspective. The last two shows, we covered everything of the home selling process from the seller perspective. Now we thought, let's switch gears and let's take it from the buyer perspective. Because, at the end of the day, the buyers are the ones who get the ball rolling, and the sellers have to wait for the ready, able, and willing buyers to come forward with their offers. So let's start with the most important step. No money, no honey. So let's talk about that is true, right?
That is the funny part. When I was dating with Ken, and one of his friends said he's very wealthy. Until today, I'm still trying to looking for that part of the gold.
Trying to find the honey, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
That's right.
I have a honey. I try to find the money.
Yeah,
so that's
right.
the part.
That's right. Well, that's also very important from the buyer perspective. So even though buyers can look at homes without a pre-approval letter, we think it's wise, especially in today's market, which is still competitive, maybe not super highly competitive, but certainly competitive, from the buyer perspective. Mm-hmm. It's good to have a pre-approval letter. Or if you're going to pay cash, if you're in that fortunate group, have your proof of funds because the home search goes quickly, as we're going to discuss. So you should have your pre-approval letter. You don't want to be in the unfortunate situation of having found a home you really like and then having to wait a day or 2 or 3 days to contact the loan officer to get the pre-approval letter. So,
yeah. First of all, Ken, that's a very good point, right? I have something additional to add on that. And when you buy a home, I often heard the buyer said the horror stories. That's just like, there's a certain things you could do a prayer, like a homework, right? Just like as I said, Ken and I are so different.
You can make it's called a preemptive strike.
Yeah. You and I are so different. I'm the person is the day before exam, don't talk to me because I got a whole book to read. All the summaries, I don't have time to read the whole book, at least read the summary before the test. But for you, Ken, you every week you to school, you get it ready, so the exam comes, you are calm and ready.
Thankfully, our daughter takes after me in that regard because she's anxious like a week before or getting to school. She always wants to get there to band practice. She always wants to be there 10 minutes, 15 minutes early. I'm like, Maria, we have like 15, 20 minutes. Don't relax. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's definitely take out your genes because my one's always, last minute. And I think better last minute. But from the buyer perspective, right? I mean, I understand you have different personality, just like you and I, but I would highly recommend you to go to listen to this session, at least have some tips, our experience, so we can help you to reduce your stress and help you to have a much more smooth transaction. As you mentioned, Ken, the pre-approval. I think pre-approval serve two purposes. Number one is you have to know your budget, how much you can. I mean, there's no point for you to look at a home we can't afford, right? First of all, you may not even get approval. You may not able to buy. So secondly, even you bought it, you don't want to be house poor, right? So the budgeting is very important. Buyers, some buyers more conservative, some buyers more aggressive in that aspect, right? You have to speak to a loan officer. What they do is they go through your income, they go through your credit, they go through a lot of things and they give you a pre-qualification. What that means is you have a budget in mind. Say, for example, if you qualify to purchase 600,000 house, doesn't mean you're going to go out to buy 600,000 house. At least you're capable. Some people may want to live well below their means, like you and I, right?
Not to be house poor.
They want to, but you need to know your limit. On the other hand, right, if you look at a house you really like and say you could buy if you prove for 600, but you want to stay in 500,000 budget, which is fine. But one day, somewhat, you saw on your cell phone, there's a beautiful home hit every bottom, right? Every button on the list. So you fell in love with it and you could afford it. At that time, you have to make a decision whether you want to take a leap of faith and buy it or not, right? But at least you could afford it. So very often, especially first-time home buyer, they get so excited. But you need to pre-approve. some agent won't show the house before you get a pre-approval. Other agent will show you a house, later on realize you cannot qualify. It's not only to save agent time. It's not the agent lazy, right? It is for the buyer as well. You don't want to fall in love with something later on you can't have it. It's really disappointing. Also for the seller point, right? You know, they have to get a house ready. You go there and then you're not qualified. That's really they wasted their time and energy. So in order to avoid that, I think personally, I highly recommend it. If you think about buying a house, the first starting point should start with your loan officer.
Right.
Okay. To talk to loan officer to see how much you're qualified.
Right. And then I think the second point would be then you want to find yourself a knowledgeable buyer agent who's familiar with the areas that your home search is entailing. You might want to interview some different agents. Yeah. And you could also, in conjunction with that, you could also do your own homework on searching different neighborhoods that are important to you, because people buy a home for various reasons in different stages in life. Right. Some people buy it because of the increase in the family size, so they need a larger home. Some do it due to job relocation, due to school-age children. They want to move to a better district with better schools. So there's a lot of factors. So you can certainly do your homework as the buyer and start looking at the areas that you want to focus in on, and then you should try to find a qualified buyer agent who can assist you in finding the homes that match your criteria within those neighborhoods.
And also a lot of agent, right? First of all, you have to feel the trust factor, right? You have to make sure the agent is really you can trust, you can rely on, is your confidant. And secondly, the agent have to have enough knowledge and guide you, because most of the buyers, first-time home buyer, even you repeat buyers, but the agent will do these as a job every day, right? How many houses buying and sell for each client. So you have to heavily, rely on the agent to be, professional, to watch out for your interest and advise you accordingly.
And I think also, Jane, the most important thing, which I think people don't do enough of, especially agents and everybody in life, is listen. You have to listen to what your buyer's needs and wants are. What type of house they're looking for. We often would get so many complaints from other the public that had certain agents that sent them just a mass mail of every house that hit the market in Middletown, USA, and it wasn't catered. There was no customization towards the type of house they want, colonial ranch, the location, busy road, non-busy road. So you really have to listen carefully and then try to and really. That's an important thing. You really have to. There's really a gel factor. You really have to gel and click with the buyer and the agent. Your realtor should be is your partner. You're invested in one of the largest purchases of most people's lives. So you want somebody who you really bond with and connect with and feel that you're on the same page.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of time I feel the seller more careful in choose their seller agent. Normally the interview they try to understand whether you're on the same page with them mentally and the principle and what's your strategy, how you're going to do it. But with a buyer, a lot of time they just call the number or they meet somebody, they just go. And often I found a lot of buyers just call around. Right? They don't have a particular agent. They just call, every time they call different agent, call different listing agent. And a lot of buyers have a misunderstanding, in my opinion. They want to work with a listing agent. I mean, I'm a listing agent. Majority last year I sold 98 homes, 96 was a listing. But I have to say, right, you should have your agent to represent you, because your agent will be on your side, will advise you accordingly. And, so you should really take the time to get to know your agent, to choose one carefully. Because if the agent have experience, they can guide you, they can advise you, you can avoid a lot of headache down the track. Yeah, down the path. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Your agent can guide you on finding the type of home you want in the neighborhoods you want, also the area you want to live in based on the schools, the proximity to work, the closeness to relatives. So that's where the interview process is really key. The agent should ask you the questions so he or she could gather the important criteria. What's most important to you in the home acquisition process? Is it closeness to the job? being in a good school district. They'd have to prioritize, busy road. You're willing to buy a house in a busy road as long as the school district is key. So it's really, there's no one bill that fits all. I think
Absolutely.
but that's really where the interview and the questioning and the agent has to gather the information and try to, to develop a game plan based on each particular buyer's needs and wants.
Yeah, how responsive the agent is, how much knowledgeable, and that's all very important part. And sometimes, I found it is very important for you to choose the one. Not only the personality click with you, also had the skills and the principle, to protect your interest. For example, I just heard last week there's from another agent, right? The buyer made an offer, went under a contract, a home inspection, and did a survey. Later on, they realized there's a wetland in the backyard, but the buyer purpose from the day one, they told agent they want to build a swimming pool. So, if the agent know that before you make an offer, the first thing you would ask whether there's a wetland, right? So that house may not be suitable. So at the end, they went through all these, spend thousands of dollars for lawyer fee, for the home inspection, for the appraisal, for everything, and the survey. And then they realized there was a wetland.
So when they get the survey and the title report, they realize they're wetlands, but they're so far into the process. And like you said, they've spent maybe $1,000, probably $2,000 plus the loan application fees. So they're out of pocket that money.
And the time.
And the due diligence up front had the agent, perhaps there was no seller disclosure, but typically if there was, the seller disclosure should have revealed it unless the seller had really no knowledge.
I think in that point, right, we go a little bit deeper in that now. But how do you prevent that? You can ask whether the seller have a survey. That's number one. If they don't, you can just have a look, whether seller disclose, and you can go to the township to ask. You can do Oprah, you can do the township. So if you do the homework, if the swimming pool is the deciding point, and you should just, if you do that, the diligence up front, and it will avoid a lot of disappointment and the timing and the money wasted down the track.
Right.
So that's very important. So once again, very good agent would know that's the bottom line. You need a swimming pool. If no swimming pool, you don't want to buy it, and they should know upfront.
Absolutely, right. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So continuing on, Jane, in the home buyer process, the next important step for the buyers is to interview and consider getting a real estate attorney. And people may say, well, why do I need an attorney? I didn't even sign an offer yet.
I don't even see a house yet.
I didn't even see the house yet. But the point is, you want to interview, get some recommendations from either friends or from your realtor as to an experienced real estate attorney. The reason being is because the process moves quickly. Once you do make the offer and the offer gets accepted, you're going to need to have your attorney. So you don't want to scramble the last minute and start interviewing attorneys. So it's good to have an attorney lined up. You don't have to pay the attorney anything or really do much. The attorney won't do anything until he or she receives a fully signed realtor contract, but it's just good to have that person lined up.
I have to say, Ken, I can't agree. I'm really cannot agree more with you. This is really very important, right? Have an attorney. As you said, a lot of people say, why I need an attorney? You do. I give you two examples. First example was the buyer. There was my listing, a lot of offers come in and a multiple offer. And one buyer, they had attorney already selected. So during the offering process, they put in the offering, they offered the lawyer name, lawyer contact and everything. So they just show the seller they're ready. They're ready to move on, to move forward with the process. How do you show ready? I have a lawyer ready. After the loan is done, everything's done. Let's move forward, right? So that's the intention. But just lucky enough, the seller know the buyer attorney, because when the seller looked at the information, they said, "Oh, my son and my daughter is their children. They go to school. They're good friend, so they know each other." Mm-hmm. So that's really. At that point, I think seller just chose that buyer because they just feel good about it, right? Obviously there was over 10 offers. There was like 3 or 4 at a par. Everybody is almost, I said to seller, these 3 or 4 offer, doesn't matter which one you pick, you're very outstanding offer, right? There was well over asking everything, you hit every point. But at the end, the seller picked them because seller saw the buyer attorney name. So I like that attorney. It's a very nice person. That's very reasonable. And let's go with it. So that's really, I mean, it's not happen a lot, but sometimes it can happen, right? And secondly is, I found a lot of time, right? People from out of state, they may not familiar with the New Jersey rules, right? And they don't want, they said, I want to make an offer, but I don't want to sign a contract. But in New Jersey, this is standard form you fill in, you sign it. When you sign it, quote offer. Once your offer accepted, signed by the seller, that's change the name to contract. Right?
And it becomes just a non-binding,
but it's still contract.
Right,
it's still contract. So a lot of buyers feel, I don't want to sign a contract. I want my lawyer. But in fact, if you don't sign that, not offer later become a contract, but it's now binding, we can't move forward with the process.
Right. And often, and sometimes what happens is the buyers will say, I trust what you're saying, but I still want to run it by my attorney, and they'll go ahead and they'll take the step, they'll talk to their attorney, and then the attorney will give them the reassurance saying, yes, go ahead, it's safe for you to fill out and sign the contract offer, and then once it's fully executed, the attorney will review it as part of the attorney review process. So, but a lot of buyers they're nervous. It's a big deal, so they just want that assurance from the attorney that they're not going to be locked into anything once they sign the realtor contract.
I totally agree, but that's why you should do homework. Like when you talk to when you get engaged with the loan officer, get approval, when you interview the agent, find an agent, decide the agent represent you, and the third thing is hire attorney, get all your question answered, right? And we did have a case, the buyer want to make offer, but they only give a one-page letter of intent, which is very unusual for residential property. Nevertheless, they did it, and we negotiated based on we got the pre-approval, everything else. But in the meantime, they want to consult the attorney to write an offer. Obviously, we have multiple offer at that point. Some other agent knew they lost it. The buyer went way up, and then by the time they found an attorney, they gave me the contract. We already signed up with someone else. So they said, well, why you go back your word? It's not we go back our word. It's truly you didn't have a binding contract or even non-binding contract, right? You go back step to find a lawyer. That makes seller a little bit nervous. That means you're not prepared. Right.
And besides having a lawyer that's trustworthy, you want a real estate attorney that's responsive, because there is, as we're going to cover later, the attorney review is time sensitive. I mean, once the contract is disapproved by either attorney, the attorney review process can drag on and on until attorney review is concluded. So you want an attorney that's responsive and experienced in real estate, because if you hire an attorney that doesn't specialize in it, they might take a week or 2 weeks or figure what's the rush to get the letter back. Well, the rush is if you don't conclude attorney review, especially from the buyer side, you have no protection. Basically, another offer a higher or better offer can come into the seller, and the seller attorney can cancel your contract without any issue, without penalty for any reason whatsoever. So you want your buyer attorney to be responsive, knowledgeable, and experienced in doing this, so they know the importance of getting in and out of attorney review in as short a time as possible, especially from the buyer side perspective.
Yes, I 100% can. Especially during the last 2 years, it's really very much a tight inventory and a seller market per se. And get out review is definitely in the advantage of the buyers. That's 100%. Because how many times we're in the term review and the lawyer didn't finish by Friday, and the Saturday, Sunday, there's some more offer come in and boost it out. It's it's an unfortunate thing, but to have the lawyer available. And I'm not saying give up your rights, absolutely, to be responsive. And not doing the job is totally different thing, right? You could be doing your job effectively and get all. I see some buyer attorney, the moment we send out a contract, within half an hour, 45 minutes, the letter already out. Why? Based on we just discussed, right? The buyer already discussed with the attorney before they even made an offer. So they pretty much go through the principle of the contract. So they already discussed that. So the lawyer already know what's the buyer's intention and bottom line. So they pretty much outlined the letter already. Mm-hmm. The standard letter, they already outlined the fit to the buyer desire already, right? So in that case, we highly, highly recommend it to hire a lawyer. As you said, Ken, there's no cost, right? You have to do it anyway. And at that time, if you find a house, you hire a lawyer, you're under the time pressure. If the lawyer didn't call you back in the court, whatever the reason, right? But now, especially on the weekend, lawyer not working Saturday, Sunday. So just, when you're start looking the process, just do the homework front. So you just hire a lawyer, you talk, you ask all the questions you have. So later on, when you get a contract, when you get an offer, you're much more familiar with the process.
Right.
Yeah, that's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we kind of jumped into the attorney review process, but that was mainly the purpose of this was mainly to hire the real estate attorney prior to actually finding your home. So really, we kind of went.
Or you can do parallel.
You can do a parallel, but then what should be going on? You should be viewing the suitable homes with your agent, and that's where you get into now. That's the fun part or the exciting part for the buyers. You have your pre-approval letter, you have your attorney lined up. You know what home you can afford, and also how much you want to pay for the home. Because like Jane, like you were saying, if you're pre-approved to purchase a $600,000 home, you may only want to buy a $450,000 or $500,000 home because you may not want to expend that monthly mortgage payment. Even though most pre-approval letters are factored with a safety factor and allowance, they know you're going to need money for vacation, for food, for cost of living expenses. But nonetheless, a lot of buyers, like you said, are more conservative, and they don't want to extend their means even to what they're approved to. So you search for the homes, and so talk, Jane, what's involved because you did work with a lot of buyers before you became a list agent. We have a team. So what's involved in now the search process and getting ready to submit the offers?
Yep. For the search part, right, you have to really know what you're looking for. I do come across some buyer, they want to see home in every town. So in that case, you spread yourself too thin, right? You have to see what's important for you, what you try to achieve. You want to be close to work, you want to be good through district, easy transportation, or close to your family, or close to your friend. You have to pretty much, narrow down a few towns. So in that way, you narrow down a few towns, you can go deep search in that town and drive around the town and visit the place, right? And talk to neighbors if you like some houses like the neighborhood, right? Cool. If you see, especially now,
open house. You didn't mention that's your favorite. You should say they should go to the even. If
I'm going there. Okay. It's not there yet. So
right.
you just have to circle where if you see someone there, talk to them. If now it's still very nice weather. If you see a neighbor and talk to them what they think and the neighborhood, right? And see who lives there. And whether it's that you desire, to be there. And another thing is, as you say, is my favorite thing, open house. Oh. And with the open house, right, I want to see if you have an agent, right, obviously you want to see more house on your own. I totally get it. But open house, sometimes there's a big line there and it's overview. If you as a buyer go in there for half an hour in detail, open every cabinet, the line will be out there. Right. So normally, because we're still during the COVID, we don't allow everybody like used to be. You have if it's vacant home, you allow a lot of buyers to come at the same time. Now we still take a very strong precaution to protect you as a buyer as well as the agent and the other buyer and the seller, right? So you definitely welcome to the open house, 100%. And open house, you can talk to either the listing agent or the agent from the seller's company, because may not be the listing agent, him or herself to be there, but their office or the company, the team may be there. So always get more details, absolutely. But before you calling the agent, if you say a house, before you calling an agent, you have to understand if you have an agent, you have to let them know you have an agent. Because otherwise, if you go into open house, you like the house, you bought from that, if you engage with the person who's in the open house, they would be your agent represent you. So, and if you tell them later on, oh, by the way, I have an agent, but the agent was why didn't you tell me earlier?
And it creates a conflict and a potential for an awkward situation, and that may make the seller shy away from getting engaged in that because they don't want a buyer who's torn between two agents. So you got to be careful who's the procuring
clause,
and that could get into you don't want the two agents fighting. So it's best if you have a buyer agent that you're working with, you should disclose it to the host of the open house so there's no future issues down the road, and that person knows to respect.
You can just tell them I have an agent, and we'll work with that agent. We'll work with each other. We respect that. So if you tell me you have an agent, no problem, right? There's no issue. We'll welcome that. So we will call your agent for the follow-up and the feedback. So if you see a house online, if you call a number, you have to disclose. You say, hey, I work with the agent, but I have a question. Most, it depends on the agent like myself, right? If you call me, I'm still happy to answer your question. But some agent may say, well, you should call your buyer agent, right? It's true. If a lot of time, right, you call your agent, the agent will find out the answer for you. But you always tell them upfront, I have an agent.
Okay.
I work with an agent.
Sounds good.
So,
this is to be continued next week. We have a lot more steps. We're going to continue it with the next show. Hope everybody has a great Labor Day weekend.
yeah, enjoying your summer break. Yeah.